Kerbal Space Program. Zombies in Space. Episode 6. Some you kind of win, some you just don't. So last we left our little Kerbal on the moon. He'd done all his sciencey things. And he's getting ready to return to Kerbal. And so we're checking, thinking maybe there's enough fuel to get him back. Maybe we can do it. Wasn't 100% sure, but I thought, well, let's try it. Again, the science greed. I want those science points. So we look up, we look over. There's Kerbal, there's the sun. So I'm thinking if we take off and start burning in that direction, we can pretty much try to get directly there, or create an escape trajectory to head me off in that direction. And the idea is to get a trajectory where you pass through Kerbal's atmosphere so that it'll slow you down and eventually bring you home. And that's what I decided to do. I could have tried to put it into an orbit around Moon first and then tried to create an escape trajectory, but I figured I'd try to do it the more direct route. So finally the decision is made and we're going to launch. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so we're taking off. Hey, we didn't destroy the flag, so that's good. Pull in the gears, put them out, pull them in again. Okay, sometimes you kind of have to double click to get the gears going, and it just messes me up. As long as I put them down when I need to land, that's the really important thing. Okay, so now I start burning in the direction that I think it should be going. I think I was making a mistake in looking at the ship instead of the nav ball there. It's much easier to avoid confusion if you look at the nav ball. Okay, he's going up. He's going up. There's Kerbal up at the top, and the sun. I mean, the star. I don't know. Anyway. So, trying to increase this trajectory. Trying to escape Moon's orbit. Trying. So I look at what kind of a maneuver I'd have to do, if I just keep going straight. And it looks like if I just keep going straight, I should be able to get into a free return trajectory. Things are looking good. Things are looking good. So I get rid of that maneuver node, and I think, well, I should be making it. Should be making it. Everything looks great. Fine and dandy. We're going back to Kerbal. We're going back to Kerbal. Okay, and we're out of fuel. Okay, we're not going back to Kerbal. No. So at this point, I realize this ship is going to crash. There's no question about that. It will crash. But we may be able to save our Kerbal. He may be able to get himself into space. So I decide, well, if we can save the Kerbal, that's a positive. But there's a heck of a lot of science sitting on this spacecraft, and I might as well try transmitting it so that I can get the points, or salvage some of the points from it. So I go transmit all. Transmit everything. And so I kind of want to keep my Kerbal in the ship until everything's been transmitted. Plus, there's no sense in trying to get him to go anywhere until we're at the top of the trajectory anyway. So once it says that it's finished, we're getting close. We're getting close. Once it says everything's finished, it's time to release the Kerbal. Well, transmitting more data. Everything's done. Okay, just making sure. Crew report wouldn't do me any good anymore. Let's go EVA. EVA report. That's not going to do me any good anymore. So at this point, there's no more science that I can get. There's no more science I can send home. We're reaching the top of the trajectory. It is time to send this guy on a one-way trip into orbit, hopefully. Hopefully. So I basically aim the spacecraft in the prograde vector and get him out of there. And I'm not very good at maneuvering these guys with their thrusters. Well, I've shown that before. Oh, and apparently he's already let go of the ship, so he's not interested in staying there anyway. But I try to kind of aim the ship in the forward direction and aim him along with the ship in the direction the ship's going and just fire his thrusters. Because, well, if he goes in that direction, that should put him into orbit. He looks so small against the moon. But if I can get him into orbit someday, I just might have to go and save him. Of course, the fact that he transmitted all his useful science, and yeah, see, nothing to get there. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. The fact that he's transmitted all of his useful science and hasn't managed to find any more food for the rest of the zombies means that, well, if I get him into orbit, he may just stay there for a while. I'm not entirely sure it's necessary for me to recover him, but maybe one day. Maybe one day. So he's in orbit. Just kind of working on trying to make it a little more circular, but he's in orbit. No threat of crashing into the surface, unless something comes along that he gets onto that will crash into the surface. He looks pretty happy though. So, put the rocket pack away. Still got a fair amount of fuel. And he looks just really happy. He enjoys floating around in space. Alright, back to the ship. Back to the ranch. Yeah, right. Okay, well, we might as well follow this. The doomed lander. It wasn't supposed to end this way. It really wasn't supposed to end this way. And we're going... No. I was going to say, we're going at high speed. We've almost reached double the speed of sound. Although in space, no one can hear you scream. There's really no sound on the moon. But if there was, we were pretty close to double the speed of it. Anyway, so we've got some science points. Might as well spend them on something. Dun dun dun. So we can get the fuel. Fuel lines are good. Fuel lines are good. Then you can do some fancy staging for your rockets. That will always help out. So might as well get that. Can't afford any of that. Oh no. Well, we got to unlock other things before we can get to those if they're a dark gray. The light gray you can still unlock. And there's some batteries and some solar panels. Active solar panels. I like those. I really like those. So, research those. See what else is there. Large electrics. Nah, really. Can't afford any of that anyway. And I could almost afford a thermometer, because more science is always good. The more science points you got, the better. And there's another science technology. So I can't afford any of that stuff. And I couldn't even figure that out until I clicked on it and said, you can't afford that. And so now it's Edford Kerman's turn. I'm going to try to send him to the moon as well. And as you can see on there, I've got the fuel lines. And every time I unlock more technology, I keep modifying my spacecraft. I've also added more fuel tanks. You might notice at the bottom of the the Science Junior pods on the lander. I've got more fuel attached, so hopefully we won't have the issue of it not returning. But we shall see. Alright, yeah, get rid of those. Get rid of those. Once the fuel's gone, they're not doing us much good. In fact, they're just holding us back. Abandoned tanks. Anyway, so he's going up and kind of not quite slanted in the direction I would like. We always want to aim for 90. Well, not always. If you're going for a polar orbit, you don't want to go for 90. But generally, you want to go for 90. So, trying to adjust it slowly. At least he's not totally off base in terms of the direction he's headed. Go, Ed, go. Go, go, go. Alright, so almost at 8,000 meters, or sorry, yeah, 8,000 meters, 8 kilometers. Speed is approaching 200 meters per second. Things seem to be going well. He's going fairly straight here. And he's reached 200. And he's over 10 kilometers. So, should really be starting to turn him towards the 90 degrees, angle him over. Again, one of my concerns with this kind of a design is that it's kind of top heavy, and if I start tilting him over, he may just keep tilting and tilting and tilting. But we're getting a bit of a roll going here, but still trying to tilt him towards the 90 degrees. We're kind of off here, but heading in the right direction. Now he's over, well, almost 500 meters per second, half a kilometer every second. So he's approaching double the speed of sound. And those outside fuel tanks are starting to run low, and I'm getting tilted down very, very low. Hopefully it doesn't just start tilting towards the planet. And we're getting towards that orange range, and we're also getting away from the 90 degrees. So this thing is not as easy to steer as you might hope, and those engines are done, so get rid of them. Yeah, this is not ideal. It's definitely not on the trajectory that I would want it to be. It's kind of doing its own thing. But the higher up we get, the less interference with the atmosphere, so the easier it should get to control. Also, the less effect we have from gravity. But I decide, let's do some science. Material study from upper atmosphere. And observe materials bay. Observe mystery goo. Goo seems to be getting very cold now. Write that down. It almost looks like I haven't actually done that. Oh, fuel's out there. Get rid of that. So I've got less weight. The top is now closer to the middle of the rocket, so it might be easier to keep under control, I hope. And it looks like it will be entering space. It's not in orbit, or at least not in a stable orbit around the planet, but it is definitely going into space. So that's good news. And those engines are done. So drop them. And we're, oh man, we're definitely going high into space. Maybe it's time to cut the engines. And then we can sort things out after. There we go. So we've got over 800, well almost 900 units of liquid fuel left. That should be a fair amount to get to the moon. A good portion of that, with those extra fuel tanks now, a good portion of that is in with the upper stage, the lander stage. So that's good news. So release the photovoltaic cells. That way we won't run out of power later, because that's never fun. And set ourselves up to get into orbit. Alright, do the time warp. Try and line things up. Get everything timed right. And just about ready to fire. Oh, the engines are actually already firing. I've got the engines going, not at very high speed, but keeps pushing. He can get into orbit. Okay, so we're getting closer to the high point of the trajectory. Time to ramp up the engines a bit. Push that trajectory out there. Try and get it into orbit. Oh man. Well, he's kind of on the downward slope here, but he's so high up, I think he should be okay. Fuel's going down, but we still have over 750 for liquid fuel. I don't know, I usually just kind of look at the liquid fuel in terms of fuel as to how important it is. It's a good indicator. Once it hits 0, you're done. And so now we've got some kind of an orbit, but it is now a stable orbit. Yay! We have achieved a stable orbit. So we've got one guy stranded in orbit around Moon. We've got Ed, who is on his way. Well, not yet. He's in orbit around Kerbal, but we will be sending him to Moon to try to land with our new improved lander. There's Moon. Try to get him to do some science, and there's really nothing for him to do here. Nothing to see here, at least nothing hasn't been seen before, apparently. So in the next episode, Ed will fly to Moon and try to land. Alright, see you then.